Hi, this is Money Flow Mel with Florenzics. Instead of just doing some screenshots tonight, I wanted to actually jump in and go through and talk through some of the dark pool prints that we have been seeing this evening and point out a few things that I'm actually looking at. Going to kick it off with AI. This one has been relatively quiet as far as the dark pool activity that we've been seeing. I actually have this filtered to show all of the activity from the beginning of May, and this is one of the first dark pool prints that we've seen, and this is coming after a huge day. We did have news this morning with a bigger jump. 550,000 shares at 23.97. Taking a look at the chart, I have been watching this one. I was talking about how you started to get kind of quiet, started to tightly compress here and holding the 200-day. Boy, did we definitely have the volume come in. Volume here decrease, and we jumped on volume today. Have been seeing some options flow come through that continued some of this momentum. Did just want to side note that we are bumping up against your anchored volume VWAP from the low as well as the high. We're kind of getting stuffed right here, so just a little caution there. But also did want to point out the higher short interest. I mean, this one only has a 90 million float, 34% short. You're definitely have the potential to have continuation just based off of a short squeeze. One other side note I did want to add was the net options delta. You can see that we're very positive here. So this is the call side. You're very flat on puts. That's going to be your orange line. But your blue line, this activity today was consistently and constantly supported by just call momentum. As represented by the net options delta, and did also want to just side note here that you have a larger gamma level at 25. That's really going to be your bigger, and of course your whole number up at 30, but the chances of kind of hitting 25, I think that is in the cards. We did also have some flow setting up positioning out of the money into the 25s as well as 526 25 calls. Google, one that's been active recently. We did finally break out of some consolidation. We do have some larger size this evening. Just going to draw your attention over here to where we have the dark pool activity. A larger one, 1.96 million at 11/16/51. But you'll see that these after hour prints are all rolling in at the same price. This one has been extremely active. Going to kind of walk through this chart here on Google. Through this, let me actually go to a daily because I just wanted to show this. This has been one where we've had several larger dark pool prints, and this has been since, where did we start here? April 25th when we started to see into this consolidation. So on this move up here, you had 7 days where you've had inside activity. So you just were kind of consolidating all through this structure here. You've seen larger dark pool prints, and going to kind of just try to open this up. So there's been a lot of activity throughout. So I just wanted to side note, when you do have dark pool activity in, add that to your chart. Make sure that you have that because that's giving you another larger level to work off of as support and resistance. That's where you have concentrated volume by size. But I want you to think from an institutional perspective, they're not always able to get all the shares that they'd be looking to in one swoop, and you don't necessarily just get that move. You've got to look at your structure. You got to look at that daily chart. What do you have going on? And one of the things that I wanted to side note, this activity here from 425 at 103.85, we did bounce off of that, continued to see prints, but when we came back, we did a retest and actually held that level. That's one of the things that I like to look for. Are we holding, within these range? Are we respecting these levels? And we certainly did, and finally did get a breakout. So let's talk about a little of the activity that we had today. So this evening, 2.67 million shares. Google has made an amazing run the last couple of days, definitely showing some relative strength. You've got the XLC Communication Services, strong sector seasonality in May. Do want to also add that they will be presenting this week at a conference on May 18th. That's going to be this Thursday at 10 a.m. So just a level to work off of. Of course, we've got this little gap below. May be running into a little bit of exhaustion. Money flow has continued to come in. We're starting to see a little bit more time and size adding on here into Google. And it seems like with these tech names, that's what we've been seeing, where they kind of stick with one and we continue to see some of that momentum. We'll see. It is OPEX week. Just keep that in mind, but definitely one to keep on the watch list, especially with an upcoming event. Not sure if we'll get additional insight out of Google in the upcoming conference or not, but did want to make sure that one is on your list, especially because we had so much activity here in this range. That's a lot of shares before this one actually broke out, and that's what I like to be able to see. A little quiet before you really start to break out to the upside. Let's go back and see. Intel semi-space. So this one has been seeing some repeats, hasn't really made the move, but did just kind of, again, want to bring this one up because of just all of the activity we've seen. A little bit more pre-market today, but we've seen some really notable size, and they've been pretty consistent here. So I'm going to just bring you over to that chart and walk you through what we have here on Intel. So you've had kind of more of a basing pattern here in Intel. We've accepted price action within this range. You've got a bit of a pennant, so I'm going to kind of zoom in here and talk about some of these larger prints that we've had here within this range. Looks like we started back on 5.9, starting to see some size, 1.7 million, and then this 5.10 the day after, 7.8 million. That's not typically the size that we would see in this name, and we've just continued to see repeats. And again, you've had price moving around, but again, look at the structure. We've got this pennant here. You're just kind of starting to get pretty tight with your consolidation. And this evening, that was pre-market, 2.75 million shares coming in at an area of support. So I think you want to make sure that you have alerts set up around a breakout out of this pennant. Do want a side note, 531, they will be attending a conference, the TD Cowen's Tech, Media, and Telecom Conference. But we are seeing quite a few repeats and notable size that we don't typically see, and INTC has been pretty quiet, especially after basing here sideways for quite a few weeks. Last one is Match, and not a name you would typically see this kind of size. We've got this print right here, 2.5 million. That is 50% of 30-day average volume. And why is that important? So each ticker is going to trade volume relative to their own individual. So to compare Apple with a print versus something that's like not as heavily traded, you definitely want to know where you're at with the individual names. 2.5 million plus this 5.3. So you get 3 million here. This is definitely notable size. You don't see too much come into Match. Not really seeing anything from an options flow perspective. Did go back and review some historical activity. The last time we saw size was 12/16. That's going to be way back over here. I'm on the weekly chart. You had 4.36 million up at 41.34. I'll go ahead and drop down here to a daily. You've got a little bit of a falling wedge here, and nice volume. And of course, with that dark pool activity, it's definitely notable. It's above average for Match. When we see options flow in this name, we don't see it very often. It does do fairly well. Again, I went back and tried to look at historical, not really seeing anything that's standing out, a little spec flow here and there. They do have the fireside chat set up for 523 at 11:30. That's going to be next week, JPM Global Tech Media. And so maybe it's a catalyst play, maybe beat down a growth name. Perhaps running into some of this resistance here as you get to the 37 level. Or maybe we come up and actually test this larger dark pool print. So do want to just add one thing. When we had that dark pool print come in here back on 12/16, you did get a nice ramp up. So will we see that this time? Time will tell, but definitely one to keep on your watch because Match does not see this kind of size. Thank you so much for your time. Hope you enjoyed this. We'll try to do this a little bit more often where we do charts and matching up with a little voiceover. Thank you for tuning in.